Hello, hello. Welcome to the Creators Lounge podcast. My goal is to create a short-term podcast that examines a specific field, such as music production or fashion. My hope is that you will hear something of value and apply that to your own life or your own art form, whatever it may be. This season, we are examining music production, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Creators Lounge podcast. Really excited to have a guest with us today whose name is Ippi. He performs like lofi music and such, but he's also very diverse with the kind of sounds he conquers. Ippi, tell us a little bit about yourself, my man. Where are you from? What do you do?
Hi, my name's ipsen. I'm from Seattle, but right now I'm up almost towards the Canadian border at Western Washington University.
That's awesome. All right, man. And how long have you been doing music for?
Well, I guess I started getting into music when I was like 7 because my parents put me into piano recitals and all of that, just me and my brothers. But I was also I was more into it than everyone else, and I was forced to practice a lot more than them too, which I didn't like at the time, but it's definitely helped me a lot now. And I think I was either a sophomore or a junior in high school when I got into producing. My friend let me try out FL Studio, and it was so fun. So then I got it for myself, and it took about maybe half a year. Like I got it, the learning curve when you're learning a DAW is insane. Like you have no idea what you're doing the entire time. So I took like a half year off and then got back into it towards the end of sophomore year. And now I'm just addicted to it. Like it's just what I do. If I'm not working and doing anything else, I'm just trying to make music.
That's super cool. So basically, throughout your life, you've had a lot of influences who have really helped you along. First, it was your parents, and then later it was your friend, kind of like that. Are you still using FL Studio now, or what DAW are you working with?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. When it comes to producing beats, FL Studio is definitely what I go to. It's kind of tailor-made for beat making. Like you're gonna hear a lot about how FL Studio it's kind of frowned upon in this community because it's definitely not the industry standard whatsoever. Exceptions like Metro Boomin and producers like that. But like I said, they make beats, so it's perfect for beat making. I just bought Cubase like a week ago though. But I'm not going to be making lo-fi on that. I don't see myself doing that. I use that for pretty much everything else, mainly scoring. That's the main reason why I got Cubase, is for scoring films and stuff like that.
Super cool. And for the audience who doesn't know, what are the benefits to using Cubase for doing like orchestrations or that kind of thing over FL Studio?
Okay, yeah. Well, FL Studio, the main reason why it's perfect for beat making is its step sequencer, and I might be wrong on this, but I think it's the only DAW that has a step sequencer where you can put all of your drums, for example, into the sequencer, and then you can click out the beats where you want them to hit. So that's what makes it super easy. It's very streamlined for making beats. Cubase, it's pretty much it works like Pro Tools, which is the industry standard at the time, or like right now. And I'm still learning it. I've dabbled in Pro Tools just because at my school that's what they use. It's way better for recording. FL Studio, when you're trying to record in FL Studio, it's not tailored at all for that, really. And that's what's so great about Cubase. You can record easily. You have much more control over a lot of the technical things, like bitrate and stuff like that. Everything you need to know when you're going in to record and finally mastering your track. It's kind of the whole package.
Right, gotcha. So we're talking a little bit about the way that you create music in terms of your DAWs and all that kind of thing. Let's talk about what kind of music you actually create. What genres do you like to walk in, my man?
Well, lo-fi, obviously, but it's a very broad genre. Like you have the typical lo-fi hip hop instrumentals, and within there you have really chill, really depressing, sad, uplifting. Most of it falls underneath like what you would consider like studying music, something like background, really relaxing. I've delved into experimental lo-fi, which is it's mostly ambient and it's much more about the sound design and less about the beat itself. Most of my tracks right now are I would consider them the sad lo-fi, and just because I kind of just naturally go towards those kind of chords. And I just like it, you know. But my newest album, it's technically it's lo-fi, but it has lo-fi characteristics. But I wouldn't really consider it to be lo-fi. It's more downbeat, ambient. I have a lot more singers involved, which isn't very. Well, I guess there's a lot of people who have vocalists in their lo-fi, but it's definitely not what you'll normally hear. In terms of like scoring films, like I do a lot of orchestral stuff. I'm very inspired by video game music, and I think that's just because like I was a kid, and that's pretty much all I did as a kid. And I always paid attention to the music, and I always try to listen to something on YouTube, like let's say the Elder Scrolls soundtrack, and then I have Cubase or FL Studio open, and I see if I can try to reorchestrate it or rearrange it. Really hard, but it's definitely, you always learn a lot more when you're doing it that way, and it comes a lot more naturally now than it did before. But it helped me a lot when it comes to scoring films.
Yep, I got it. Yeah, that's cool. And I guess what you're saying is like, you know, be around what you want to do and then put the work in, like put the practice in to see the results. You talked about video game soundtracks. Andrew, what are your favorite video game soundtracks of all time?
Ooh, well, you know, I gotta give a nod to Halo 3. That one is incredible. I would say my favorite one, it has to be one of the Elder Scroll games. I mean, I started with Morrowind, and that's, I think when I was that age, I was like 9 or 10 when I got Morrowind. And that's when I was really starting to pay attention to music and films, just music and media, all the way around. And so I have a soft spot for the Morrowind soundtrack. Also, the Oblivion one is incredible. I listen to that at work a lot. And of course, Skyrim. But I would say probably the Oblivion soundtrack. That one just speaks volumes to me.
Super cool, man. Yeah. And it's interesting. I want to talk about this a little bit. You're talking about the way that media, in terms of movies or video games, and interacts with music. Let's talk about that for just a minute. Like, what do you feel are films that have really implemented the music as a vital part of the movie?
That's a very interesting question, because I think we're in a period where the music industry within movies, it's kind of on both sides of the spectrum, because you'll find a lot of movies now, they don't pay attention, or they don't give a lot of attention to the music. It's more the background emotions, like this is kind of an issue that's been going on, I think, for about 10 or 12 years, where temp tracks have become a big issue, because you'll have directors deciding, well, they use temp tracks, and temp tracks, what they are is they're pre-existing music that they put on the raw edit. And it gives the composer notes of what the director wants the music to sound like. But the problem is then the directors become so addicted to the temp track that they don't give the composer a lot of breathing room, I guess, for lack of a better word, to make their own sound and really take advantage of the medium. So I don't think there's a lot right now, a lot of movies that they don't have as much potential to have amazing soundtracks, which hurts me, because me being a music guy, I think the scores kind of half the film. That being said, there are some directors who, and I think I heard this in a different podcast, but composers will always say, you'll know the good directors from the quote unquote amateur directors, because the good directors, they'll give you a little bit of instruction, but then they'll give you the creative freedom that you need. And I think Christopher Nolan is a perfect example. Him and Hans Zimmer have such a good partnership, because he involves Hans Zimmer from the very beginning in the writing process to help figure out what is it they want to say with the music. And I think Interstellar is just an amazing soundtrack because he was there from the beginning. So he was able to help design the oral atmosphere of the movie. That and Arrival, that one was Villeneuve and what's his name? Johan Johansson. That one is incredible. And he did that with just organic instruments like a piano. He had a choir, but then he just he messed around with it. So then you can't even really recognize the piano. It just sounds like synths and electronic sounds, but it's incredible, and it says exactly what it needs to say for that movie.
Fabulous thoughts, man. Thanks so much for sharing that. I had a feeling you were going to bring up Christopher Nolan's work.
Oh yeah.
He's definitely received a lot of spotlight for the way that him and Hans Zimmer, how they team up to make the music and the movies become one, basically. How do you feel about movies that don't go for like the orchestral route and they instead go for something a little bit different, such as Daft Punk doing the soundtrack for the Tron remake or something in that kind of vein? How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm all for that. I think it's really cool when artists, they kind of get into the movie industry and they just do it their own way. It keeps it fresh. What are some other examples? I can't really think of any. Black Panther. Kendrick Lamar, he curated the entire album, and I think that's very cool. But I think it also, it can be an issue when, like I said, when the director doesn't really know how to give someone the breathing room they need for creative freedom. And I find like a lot of TV shows now, that has become a big problem because you don't get much fresh, interesting music. What you hear a lot is just drones, like an entire soundtrack, and it's just electronic drones setting the mood for the entire movie or TV show. And I think that's so boring, and it's a waste, I think.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I wanted to ask you, Andrew, are you working on any film scores right now, any projects right now?
I actually have a twin brother who's in LA, and he's learning to become a director. So he gives me a lot of work just because he works in the industry. Well, right now he works on like big movie sets as a grip. But he knows enough people who are making their own movies to send them my way. And I get a lot of work. I did a horror short film, I think almost a year ago. Right now I'm working on his film right now. It's not being directed yet, but we shot a commercial for it for Indiegogo. So I'm scoring the commercial right now. It's probably the most challenging thing I've done so far because it's 80s, 70s inspired, detective-y. So I have to really harness my inner funk for that. And it's really hard when you're working with MIDI instruments, when you're trying to be as expressive as you can, especially with brass. Like funk brass is very hard to emulate, at least with the plugins I have right now. But that one's going to be fun. I'm excited for that one. I'm also I'm working on a feature-length film. It hasn't been finalized, but it's about 90 minutes. It's a typical teen angst movie, independent. I think it's going to be on Amazon Prime though, which is super exciting when it all gets finished. But that one is also a little bit out of my comfort zone, which is also a good thing. I'm all about broadening my horizons, but this one is more it's more the indie band kind of area, because they're also commissioning a lot of local bands, alternative bands, and they want me to make a score that kind of fits into that circle. So that's probably one of the reasons why I got Cubase, is because I can't really do the kind of recordings that I want to do through FL Studio, and I think that it's going to help me greatly once I really figure out how to work this new DAW.
Wow, Andrew, that's super cool, man. You've got a lot of cool projects you're working on.
Yeah, thanks.
One of the reasons I asked that was because you talked about how directors in like Hollywood or the mainstream film industry, how there's not much creativity for the composers of their films. So I wanted to know how it was for the projects that you're working on right now. How much freedom do you have in terms of the creation of that stuff? And how does it affect like your creative process, I guess you could say?
Well, obviously when I'm working with my brother, I can boss him around a little bit just because he's my brother. So, and he understands, like he's on the same boat as me because we kind of click when it comes to movies. So he gives me enough breathing room, the breathing room I need. When it comes to this one, this indie movie, it's exactly like I described the movie industry to be, because he wants to go. And I don't want to bash the movie at all, but I think when you're going for a teen angst movie, the natural musical trope you go for is the indie alternative rock band sound. And I did not want to do that. I thought it would be very interesting to, and of course I'm biased because I'm a lo-fi artist, but I thought it'd be really cool to introduce some lo-fi just because of its underground scene. And I think it'd make a very interesting oral landscape for a movie like that. And I think it was back in May or June, I started scoring with that in mind, and it was going pretty well. But then he told me about like 2 months later that he has to scrap it and he wants the alternative sound, so have to start at square one again. But yeah, it's kind of working your way through the relationship with the director. You need to know what he wants, but you also need to understand that what you're putting out there is your work and you're responsible for it. So you want to be proud of what you do. And I don't want to just, I don't want to make temp tracks. I want to make original, like Andrew Ipsen scores.
Yeah, it's fantastic thoughts, man. And it's so true. You mentioned about how you feel lo-fi would fit better, and I think it's a more accurate representation as well.
Well, I think so. Yeah.
In this era right now, like nobody the majority of people don't listen to, particularly angsty teenagers don't listen to indie rock kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like they all listen to lo-fi. That's just the reality. How long do you think it will take for that kind of trend to change, where the directors have too much power over the music? Do you think it will ever change?
Well, I don't know. Like, I think we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it's not like that all over the world. Like, a good example is Bollywood. Bollywood, actually, the composer has the highest credit in a movie. When you see posters for a movie, the composer's name is above the director's because, it's all about the music over there. And I dig that. I wish it was like that over here. Unfortunately, it's not. But, I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I do think we're starting to see a change here because for the first time, with Rian Johnson, he directed The Last Jedi. With the release of that movie came a score-only version where it's just John Williams and his music and played with the movie, and I think that's really cool. I think it might be the start of, I don't know, a change. At least I hope.
Yeah, steps in the right direction anyways. And John Williams is another great composer to shout out to as well. We were listening to one before.
He's a god.
Up next, Ippi single Banzai. Well worth a listen. So tell us a little bit about like the process for when you're creating like a film score. What's the process for the actual creation of the songs?
Well, I think it changes for me depending on the genre. When I was working on that horror short film last year, I worked from the jump scares. You need, especially with the horror genre, you are the emotional engine. You need to really emphasize the jump scares and really creep up the sound. With this alternative one, it's way different. Obviously, there are no jump scares, but this one I start with instruments. Actually, like I just play the scene that he wants me to cue. And then I just go through a bunch of instruments and play them out on my keyboard and see which ones fit the mood. And if I can fit that in multiple scenes, then I think it's an instrument that should be in the score. With this 70s funk score, it's most I have to work off of pre-existing tracks. He has a temp track for it, but I have to look up on YouTube like 70s funk disco, just because it's just so out there. Like I've never considered making funk before, even though some of lo-fi is pretty funky. But yeah, no, I definitely need the inspiration and how it's done. So yeah, horror, you start with the jump scares, and with the alternative one, it's mostly instruments. And yeah, with this funk one, it's pre-existing tracks
and a lot of research.
Research.
Yeah. It's really cool because you're coming from a film scoring perspective, like you really at like the cross points of visuals and music coming together. Real quick, I want to ask, like, what are some of your favorite movies, just as like a fun question?
Ooh, The Dark Knight is one of my all-time favorites. I think it's almost a flawless movie, almost. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, hands down, I see that maybe twice a year. And I have a book on the music of the Lord of the Rings that is just so fun to go through, just going through the mind of Howard Shore. That soundtrack is one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Let's see, what else is there? Star Wars Episode 3. That one is, I don't love it because it's a great movie. I love it because of the soundtrack and of course the fight scenes. Arrival is also a great one. I mentioned that one earlier. And I had just seen that one recently. A good one that's actually there was no composer for. They took music from, the Renaissance, and I guess this would have been a good example for when you were talking about artists curating for soundtracks, because they curated what's his name? Sufjan Stevens. He made 2 songs for that song, or for that movie, Call Me By Your Name. It's an amazing movie, but there's no original composition whatsoever, but the music just works perfectly.
Fabulous, super cool. And what I want to do now is that we're talking a lot about film scores. I want to flip this conversation and go back to the lo-fi side of things, because lo-fi is kind of like what you do as an artist. So how do visuals, like, what's the effect of the visuals in the lo-fi scene for you as an artist?
When it comes to visuals, I think from my end, when I'm producing, the visuals they're not really in my head until I go to make the artwork or I get it commissioned or what have you. Most of the visuals that you see though on YouTube and streams, that's curated by those YouTube channels, and they always do a great job. There's that trend in lo-fi where they use a bunch of anime. But it just works. I don't know why it works. It just works. And the Bootleg Boy is a perfect example, because let me see, I have him up right now. I'm always listening to his stuff because he curates amazing sad lo-fi. But he just takes stills and adds like moving rain or something like that, some kind of ambience to it. And I think the cool thing about lo-fi is you can have that. Since it's low fidelity music, you can have low fidelity images and it's still high quality lo-fi.
Woo, love that.
I know, right?
I love that. It's true. It's true.
Yeah, it works very well. And so you can do vaporwave very well. That you have that VHS kind of look to it. And it has a certain style that's very nostalgic, and I love it.
Right. All right. So you talked a little bit about like the music curation channels such as Bootleg Boy and Dreamy. You have actually been featured on those channels before.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit, like, how did that happen?
Oh, well, I mean, the first one, it was just lucky. I just, they all have their little submission pages. The Bootleg Boy has, and I know a lot of them do, they have their own SoundClouds where you can just send them a message with a track attached to it. And if they like it, then they'll put it on. And he was super nice. He always, even if he doesn't take a track, he'll always say, like, this is a cool song, but I can't take it for whatever reason. But yeah, it's really just, you got to go out there. You got to have the nerve to just message all of these people with your music, just, hey, like, listen to my music, you might like it. And a lot of the times they'll repost it, like on that's how I get a lot of my plays, is on YouTube. Thanks to the Bootleg Boy, Dreamy, and whoever else promotes lo-fi. And you have a lot of small channels too, like with 50,000 followers or less. They're obviously a lot more eager to post your music. And that's, I guess, one advice I'd say. Like, if you're just starting out, especially with lo-fi, YouTube is like the greatest aggregator that you could want, because everyone has their own musical tastes, and anyone who's into lo-fi obviously watches YouTube, because everyone watches YouTube. And you just look up lo-fi, and there's a ton of streams that are just 24/7. And if you could get your music on there, I mean, it bumped up my plays by thousands of plays just overnight, and it was amazing. It was so exciting.
Super incredible. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because over the last, I don't know, 5 to 7 years, like, YouTube music channels have really just blown up, like really come into play. And I think that they are, they have a lot of attention these days, I would say. You know, obviously we have streaming platforms like SoundCloud and Spotify, but a lot of people who are like on the beat kind of speak, like they know that the YouTube channels are the place to find really good music. What do you think about that whole like relationship between YouTube channels and the musicians?
I like it. There are some specific things about YouTube, like their compression rate kind of makes your music sound not as high quality, but that's very minor. Like, it doesn't really matter, only for audiophiles that really care. But I think it's a perfect relationship, because not a lot of people have SoundCloud. I would consider SoundCloud to be more of the underground community. You have a lot of young people like me. We just make music in our bedrooms and we put it on SoundCloud. It's not really, I don't consider it one of the big streaming platforms like iTunes Music or Spotify or YouTube. But I think the YouTube to SoundCloud artist relationship is much better than SoundCloud to Spotify or iTunes. It's much more of a process to get your music on there. You have to claim your file or profile. You need to go to a big aggregator website like DistroKid or something, and then they do all of the work for you. YouTube is much more streamlined. It's just real people who happen to be into whatever kind of music, who post people's music. They do all the promotions for you. If you're lucky, it's free, and most likely it'll be free on YouTube. And yeah, I think it's a great combination of a lot of factors.
Yeah, super true. And I think the thing about going through digital aggregators is that that's mostly a money game. Technically, anybody could get their music to Spotify and Tidal and iTunes Music if you pay the price, $30 to $100 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Whereas for YouTube, it's a community-based thing, so they have like actual audiences who are plugged in, and they have the attention currency there, like people who care about it, because it's good music.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to look real quick, and I wanted to ask you about this because when I'm talking to you, I can hear that you're really into the film score side of things. But then on the other hand, you make lo-fi and you promote in that community. Is it difficult for you to balance these two sides of your creativity?
Oh, yes. Very difficult. It's a lot easier to keep the lo-fi alias up and running and active. It's a lot harder to maintain being a film composer, because jobs are few and far between. But then when you get one, it's such a big process. Especially I did a short film that was about, I think, 20 to 30 minutes long. That took me a month of just experimenting and talks between the director and I, because we all, when you're composing for a movie, depending on what the music says, can drastically change the entire scene, and like what hits, like what notes you hit and what beats you make those notes hit. It can change a lot of stuff, like what the actor looks like he's feeling, and stuff like that. So when I get jobs like that, it's kind of all my focus, and then my lo-fi side just kind of becomes, it's in the background. It's not really on my mind, especially because I have a lot more people depending on this score to get done versus just me and my SoundCloud. And when I'm at school, I'm also a lab instructor at Western for their program for audio technology, and we get access to like their professional studio and all of that. It's really cool. But at the same time, I also act as a recording engineer. So that's like three things that I need to make sure I keep in balance. And that recording engineer job, it's a job. Like you need to get your stuff together, and you need to make sure that the artists are feeling comfortable enough to record. And then most likely they'll probably expect you to mix their tracks. But it's such a high demand studio that you have to go in at red eye hours. So like from 11 p.m. to 7 in the morning, to do the really heavy mixing. So when there was a moment last year where I was in the throes of mixing this one song for this rapper. I was also scoring a short film, and I was trying to bump out this small EP that turned out I had to wait till now to actually focus on, because there was just so much going on.
Unbelievable, man. Your schedule sounds crazy tight.
Oh, very tight.
Dude, hang in there, man. Hang in there. Good luck.
Thanks.
But you must have a lot of good experience that you can learn from your position as a professor and a position as recording engineer. What are some of the key things you've learned from those positions, man?
When it comes to like being a recording engineer, it goes without saying that it's definitely a different approach. When you're making music, it's about what story you're telling. But when it comes to being a recording engineer, it's all about the science and the techniques that you have to learn. You have to make sure that you're well organized, because anyone who wants to look at that file that you've been recording and mixing, they need to be able to understand what it is they're looking at. So it can't be a big mess. You need to make sure that the artists are also feeling comfortable, and that's surprisingly a big thing when you're going in to record these people. You need to make sure that the light is in the right mood, so they feel comfortable enough to sing or play their instrument. There are some unspoken rules to when you're a recording engineer. Like when someone's recording, and you're in the booth watching all the signals, you don't want to laugh, even if you're not laughing at them whatsoever. And this is something that the professors hit hard. Don't laugh, because it'll just make them feel uncomfortable and self-conscious, and you'll ruin the whole mixing session. And it's really about the relationships between you, the artist or band, the master engineer, and whoever else is there.
Wow, dude, very intense, but it sounds like you are definitely handling it well. You're very plugged in. You sound very capable as well at doing all this stuff, so good.
I'm glad I sound that.
Well, good for you, my man. I'm curious, though, about, like, what's your vision for yourself as an artist, like, moving into the future and possibly long term? Do you feel like the lo-fi side of you will emerge more? Do you think you're going to be doing more of technical stuff, or what?
Well, my long-term goal has always been to be a film composer. It's not one of the glamorous jobs in the film industry. You're at the bottom of the pole, so I don't know how viable it is as a career, but that's definitely what I'm going to shoot for. For my lo-fi persona, I'm kind of waiting and seeing, really. I just started getting onto social media as that profile, which I was surprised at how effective it is. I mean, I always knew as an artist, you need to have a social media presence, which always kind of bugged me because I've never been someone too big in social media, but it's important. I mean, you need to get as much promotion as you can. So I'm going to sit on my lo-fi side of me and see what happens there. A recording engineer, I don't really see that for myself. The hours are grueling. It's a hard job. I think it'll help me get my foot in the door when it comes to getting into the movie industry for sure. I can intern a lot better than before I was in that program. But yeah, I think being a film composer is my long-term goal for sure.
Right, gotcha. How interesting, man. So, but it's good that you do have like a kind of, you know what you want. You know, you kind of have a vision. I think that's important, is to have direction.
Yeah.
You know, not good to have a lot of energy without direction. That's kind of aimless. But given that you just got into lo-fi, not really sure about like where it's going to go to, do you think that you would be doing live shows at some point?
Yeah, you know, I've gotten that question a lot because I have a lot of lo-fi artist friends up at Western. The lo-fi scene's actually alive and well there, surprisingly, and they always do shows, and their goal is to play shows. I've never really considered it for myself. I love being just by myself when I'm making music or anything music related. I've never really pictured myself performing. That being said, I will not. I won't knock it until I try it. I'll definitely try it.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, well, I mean, and of course, like you said, like lo-fi is kind of like a side project for you, so it's not really something that you need to be putting 100% into, you know, and like every day on social media, I'm doing live shows, you know, et cetera, et cetera. It's more of just like kind of casual for you, I feel like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's what's nice about it. I know a lot of people who their persona as an artist is what they're going for. So they need to always be on their social media. They need to always be trying to play shows. And it sounds pretty exhausting to me. I don't know if I have it in me.
More of the studio rat, right, man?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned that a lot of your friends are lo-fi producers and such. Correct me if I'm mistaken, you're a member of the Soju Collective, is that right?
Yes.
That's super cool. Talk to us a little bit about like the atmosphere there and the experience there.
Oh, it's really cool. There's a ton of musical collectives on SoundCloud, and I came across the Soju Collective because I follow Orca Vibes, and he's kind of the big boss at Soju Collective. I'm pretty sure he started it, and there's a bunch of us in there. I think 30 to 50. They kind of trimmed off the fat a little while ago, and thankfully I made the cut. But yeah, it's a great group of people all around the world too, like people in Europe, Asia, Australia, which I think is like so exciting. You get to meet people all over the world making the same music as you. And I think once a month they're trying to make a collective beat tape. I know we just did a summer beat tape, which I think released maybe like 25 days ago. And it's just a whole collaboration of artists, and I'm all for that. Like, I love that.
Super cool. Do you think that would be beneficial for you if you had a similar collective that was all about film scores?
Oh yes, I'm sure they're out there. I got to do some digging. I know I'm a part of a composing group on Facebook because I got the Hans Zimmer Masterclass, and it came with a bunch of cool things like a group on Facebook where you get to share and collaborate. I'm not super active on that. I follow a lot of composers too, like Jeremy Soule, the guy who did all the Elder Scrolls. He's on Patreon, and he has a ton of cool like little lessons and behind the scenes things that he talks about. And there's a lot of really fascinating people who follow him. So, I mean, there's definitely a community of composers. Definitely not like there is for as like a lo-fi artist though.
Right, that's cool. And then we're talking about community a little bit. So I was curious, have you ever done any music collaborations?
Oh yeah, actually, the project I'm working on right now, there's a lot of collaborations. It was just going to be a beat tape, and that's what a lot of lo-fi artists do. Like pretty much everyone has their own beat tape. But I don't like the connotation that the beat tape kind of sets forth, at least in my mind, because when I go to make music, it's all about like the story. And so I really like music that evolves. And I think when you say it's a beat, you kind of give yourself the excuse not to evolve the music just because it's a beat, you know, it's an instrumental. But I really wanted to do something interesting, and maybe not a full on album, but just more like just a project. I wouldn't call it a beat tape. And so then I started hitting up people, and there's this amazing singer from Seattle as well. His name, I wish I knew how to pronounce it, and it should be easy. I think it's either Dime or Dame, Daym. I don't know. I probably should ask him, but he's an amazing singer. He's on 2 of my songs. I also have another singer. His artist name is Oda. He also goes to Western. He's singing on that one. I've collaborated with a lot of like lo-fi beat makers, like Ice Cream Cult. He's my roommate too. He makes really interesting beats. Really, he's really inspired by like polyrhythm. So his percussion's crazy. Also, my friend Orlo, he does a lot of EDM. His music it always blows me away. And I think it's important to have collaborators who are like way better than you at some things, so they can be a mentor. And I would definitely consider him a mentor when it comes to like sound design, because his sound design is incredible.
Super cool, man. You've had so much experience with collaborating, and I looked for your collaborations online, but I didn't see any. So like now I'm gonna go search out the ones you mentioned so I can go hear them. Yeah, I heard your solo stuff and it was really great.
I have a few reposted on my SoundCloud. I just saw some songs that I did with Houseplants, and he just started doing lo-fi like over the summer. So those are pretty new. He's just getting into it. Yeah, but a lot of the music collaborations that I do, not speaking on the ones that haven't been released yet, but like with Ice Cream Cult, we produce on our off time. So when we're like at our home doing nothing on the weekends, we just make a beat or make a song. A lot of it goes unreleased just because they're just for fun, but some of them turn out really cool.
For sure. And I wanted to ask you about your dream collabs. Who are the people you would love to collaborate with? And this doesn't have to be just for the lo-fi community. It can be anybody. Film score, rapper, vocalist, anybody. Top 3, my man. Top 3.
Top 3. Okay. Well, when it comes to like scores, I have to collaborate with Jeremy Soule. He has my soul. And it's kind of funny because he used to go to my church, so we kind of run in the same circles, and I'm gonna meet him this fall, and I couldn't be more excited. I'm just hope I don't fanboy too hard. As for lo-fi, I really want to collaborate with Goose Taff. He's a Seattle lo-fi artist. Way out of my league right now. I'm pretty sure I have to bump up my numbers for him to notice me. As for vocalists, I think it would be really cool to collaborate with Joji, because he is someone who's really bringing lo-fi to the front. Because he's an artist who sings and he makes his own lo-fi beats. But I think he was just a YouTuber beforehand. I can't think of his name. Filthy Frank, maybe.
Filthy Frank.
But his music's really cool, and I really dig that he's going the lo-fi route instead of the typical trap rap kind of mumble jumble thing.
Which can be expected, I think, because he was part of the YouTube community. So it makes sense that he would go into
good point.
lo-fi. It's cool that he actually made that choice, though. Yeah. Those are some fantastic choices for collaborations. And you mentioned on the second artist you mentioned, you said about how you need to get your numbers up. Being an up-and-coming like music creator, like so many people in the music scene, they're playing against the odds because like the number and following count is like so low. What tips do you have for people to break that barrier, so to speak?
Take it with a grain of salt, because I'm still trying to figure it out, but I know for sure that you need to be consistent with your releases, and that's something I struggle with just because I have so many balls in the air. Lo-fi is just one of the balls. But yeah, be consistent. You should post a track at the very minimum once a month, and I don't even do that. I mean, I think I go like a few months without posting a track, and that doesn't really serve you when you're trying to find someone who likes you as an artist and wants to follow you, because when they follow you, they're following you because they like your music and they want to see what you're coming out with. And if it's just dry all season long, I mean, you're going to lose that follower. Social media is a big player. You should definitely get into the social media game. And submissions. When you're submitting to like the Bootleg Boy, I mean, if you get your track on the Bootleg Boy, you're going to see your numbers boost for like a month because it's such good promotion. YouTube's a perfect example.
All right, great point. So basically, for the people listening, they just need to keep their feet on the ground, keep moving, and looking for opportunities, creating music, and putting it out there. Thank you so much for that, Andrew. That's useful, I think, for the listeners. Time for another music break. Ippi gets emotional in this next track. It's called Break From Us.
Okay, what do you want me to do?
I don't know. Look, maybe we should just take a break.
Okay, fine. You're right. Let's take a break. Let's cool off, okay? Let's get some frozen yogurt or something.
No. A break from us.
We also talked about communities and such before, Soju Collective. I was curious, do you have any label affiliations?
No, and I don't think it'd be very smart of me to do that right now, just because it's like, as Ippi, I don't. It's like I said, it's just one of the balls that I'm juggling. And if I join a record label, I'm all of a sudden responsible for this ball that I'm juggling, and it should be something that I'm putting all of my focus into, because I have all of a sudden people expecting me to live up to what I signed on for. I mean, I'm a signed artist. I should be putting all of my focus in on that. And then another note is, when you join a label, I've had some friends who joined labels here and there. It gets a little messy artistically too. You don't have as much freedom, because when you're signed, they sign a sound, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to promote your sound. And if you're still experimenting like I am and trying to figure out what your sound is, you won't be able to do that once you're signed. It's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Good thoughts. And I'm curious about something, because your whole premise is like the balance between lo-fi and film scores, right? So, do you have a vision of combining those two together somehow?
That would be my dream. If I could just combine both personas, I think my life would get a lot easier. Organizationally wise, and it would just be really cool to see like the orchestral side of me kind of blooming in my lo-fi alias, also lo-fi kind of coming into movies. And I think it'd be really cool to see a lot more lo-fi movies. I can't really think of any example.
Right, exactly. I hope you can, man. And I believe you can, because I feel like because of the internet, even niche markets can blow big, right? So there's so many consumers on the internet that can vibe with your sound. If you found a way to combine like the film score aspects and the lo-fi aspects, I think people could definitely vibe with that. So good luck. And
well, I definitely hope so. I'm gonna try for sure.
I believe it. I believe it. Call me a hopeless optimist, but I believe it. One more question.
Well, I appreciate
one more question, Ippi. Your stage name. How did you come up with it?
Well, it was actually my nickname in high school, because my last name is Ipsen, and so people would just be in the hallways screaming Ippi. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I took it and I found a cool way to spell it, and then there you have it.
All right, nice. Just decided to go with it. That's great.
Oh yeah.
And plus, like, also, like, people who knew you in real life, they can like immediately relate. Like, oh, that's the guy I used to know in high school. That's the guy I used to know in middle school.
Yeah, that's Ippi.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, man. We had a lot of great talks today, and I'm really loving the conversation. We're gonna head and move to like the final segment, and it's just like really quick spitfire. I'll ask you some fun questions. Answer as fast as you can. All right, man. You ready?
Oh gosh. Okay.
Don't worry. It's nothing. It's not like crazy. It's just like party questions, basically.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. First one. Favorite food.
Ooh, sushi.
What is your favorite weekend activity?
Producing.
What is your favorite color?
Purple.
What's your favorite social media?
Probably Twitter.
What countries do you want to visit?
I really want to visit Scotland. Looks beautiful.
What languages do you speak?
Only English.
All right, and that's all of them. All right, Ippi, man, thank you so much. A lot of great thoughts today. Is there any last words you want to say to the audience, things you want to share with them or want them to know?
Definitely listen to lo-fi. It's the shit.
And that's our boy Ippi. Guys, I encourage you to listen to his music. He has some film score stuff. He has some lo-fi stuff. Both of it's fantastic, and as he continues to discover his sound, it's going to become even more fantastic. So I will give you guys links to it. Thank you for listening today, and we will see you later. Goodbye.